Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Green Wisdom Health Show. I'm Janet Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Lewis.
And we're here to give you a very informative show today. Hopefully we'll try to keep all this straight. It's going to be a bunch of information. And we hope all of you enjoy it. And we hope all of y'all are doing well out in Green Wisdom land. This show is going to be called Are Vitamins Just Expensive Urine? And for those of you that are taking vitamins and know what they can do, there are many of you out there that are new to listening to health shows and are taking vitamins that maybe you're buying in a big box store and you don't really notice any difference and could say, well, maybe they're just expensive urine. So Dr. Lewis is going to dispel some of those myths. He's going to tell you the differences. He's going to tell you what a good vitamin and a different grade of category will do on lab work, what it can move as far as lab value numbers, which is why we run lab, and what a bad one can do as well. But first, I think we want to start the show off. We've got a bunch of questions, but we have got a letter from one of our very loyal patients for many years that was kind enough to refer his friend to us, who in turn had his wife do her lab with us. Her name's Michelle, and so Eric, the one that actually did the referring to start with, thank you very much, Eric, we love you, wrote a very nice letter to us over the weekend. And you guys, as much as we try to inspire you, it really helps when you inspire us as well. And this did that for us. So I'd like to read that letter to you, and then I'd like Dr. Lewis to comment, if that's okay, Dr. Lewis? He's ready to comment. I know he is. So he wants to pass on, Eric wants to pass on some really good news. Michelle did her lab with us and followed our instructions after a doctor visit that said her blood was out of whack and she needed a bunch of prescription medications. And honestly, that's when we get a lot of people, is when they don't want to take all these prescriptions. They kind of wait until they've been hit with, oh my gosh, you're really sick, so let's lay all these drugs on you. So she got scared and did her lab with us. Fast forward to this week when she went back to the doctor and told him, well, I did this Dr. Lewis thing, and he looked at 7 labs of panels and gave me some supplements to take. The doctor looked at the nurse, they chuckled and said, you're peeing that down the drain and they don't work, and you just need this $10 prescription and your cholesterol and triglycerides and blood pressure will be fine. So he ran her blood work again, called 2 days later, and said he apologized. I don't know who this guy is, but keep doing what you're doing and don't take these prescriptions. She had better than 50% improvement in 3 months. How cool is that? Thanks for all you guys do. And, you know, the basis of this, I guess, is the doctor actually wanted to know who Dr. Lewis was. So that was pretty cool. So, Dr. Lewis, you want to tell us a little bit about what made you different, what made you do something different with her lab than what anybody else would do, I guess?
Well, because I'm a chiropractor and I wouldn't prescribe drugs even if I could, which I can't. But and I'm not against drugs at all. I love our medical profession. But I've seen many, many years ago where the medical doctors and osteopaths, they got to where they cannot really practice. They have so-called standard of care, which is not necessarily what's in the best interest of the patients. And they're frustrated too. I've never seen an MD or DO that wasn't just a wonderful person and had good intentions. But they're not trained that way. You know, I'm a chiropractor. I think everything's nerve supply or nutrition. And, you know, to a surgeon, everything's what can I do surgically to fix it? So we're all good people who are trying to help. Just, you know, find one that has the opinion you like. And so Eric sent this email, and he told me, he said, don't let Janet read below the line. He had a little colorful remark about what he had told the doctor. So,
I didn't see it at all, Eric.
Actually, she didn't until I pointed it out. Eric, you're funny. I'm going to go down to Port Neches, Texas, wherever that is. It's southeast Texas. We're northeast Texas. I'm going to go visit them someday. But I talked to Michelle, and she's a sweetheart, and she told me the story also. And, you know, I'm not anti-medical. They've saved my bacon more than once. But here's the problem, And unfortunately, I'm a pretty simple guy, maybe unfortunately, but since when do we think that God is not involved in this process? And why, this thing, you just have expensive urine. And I said on this one huge podcast, I was a guest, and this guy has like 250,000 listeners. He said something about expensive urine. I said, well, I just had a $42 ribeye. Do I have expensive excrement? It's foolish to think that your body doesn't take what it needs from that and use it for good. You have to take vitamins. You have to take good ones. I've seen vitamins put out by famous doctors. You get famous by paying somebody 10 or 20 grand to write a book. Most of these books are not even written by the doctor. That's the only reason I could write a book, is have somebody do it better than me. But what happens is, or the reason why you need vitamins, and they have to be good ones. I've had a good wife and a bad wife. So, there's a difference in women. There's a difference in vitamins too. One of the things you have to realize, that God's in control and he works in your body, whatever you think God is. But North America is probably the most well-fed but undernourished people in history. The soil's been depleted of its nutrients at least for 100 years. And now we're saturating it with chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and it's kind of killed the microorganisms that allow the nutrients to get up into the plant itself. And then we're feeding minerally and enzyme and vitamin deficient food to our livestock, so they're not what they should be. For example, fruits and vegetables in the 1990s, we're 30 years beyond that, contain a much greater amount of nutrients than the fruits and vegetables grown in the 50s. And depending on the study, and depending on where it's grown, and depending on whether it's turnips or corn or whatever they're testing, you've got a decrease of 6% of nutrients, up to 76% less nutrients from the 50s to the 90s, and it wasn't good in the 50s. Today's crops are about 37% lower level of nutrients than those grown in 1975, and it wasn't good in 75 because of the onslaught of Monsanto glyphosate Roundup stuff. That's terrible. And so these animals that we feed the foods to, soy, wheat, and corn, they're pretty bad too. Just for example, ammonium nitrate replaces nutrients like calcium, magnesium, potassium in the making of the plant tissue itself. And then it's a junk food. It's like fast food to us. And what it does, it makes these plants grow so fast that it says, I can grow fast. I have this. It's fast food, kind of like your sugar rush. And it creates more gluten. Okay, people make fun of us people that have gluten intolerances. Well, mine was dang near killing me, literally. And now we got 4 to 40 times more gluten than we did back in the 70s. So, yes, that's creating something, and we've got new tests for it we might get around to talking about. But so you pretty much have, everybody has a sensitivity or some sort of intolerance to wheat, rye, and barley because of this aberrant protein, and that's caused by our synthetic fertilizers. That's why it's a big deal that there's a little bit of a renaissance coming on, that people are beginning to grow their own food. That's a really, really good thing. You have to reintroduce the microorganisms, which are incredibly important, just like they're important in us. So now we get, there's an average of 192 different residues detected on our foods. And this is from, I think over 100,000 pesticide tests. And this was done back in the 1990s, so it's worse now. And there's been a huge link to cancer, asthma, respiratory diseases, think COVID, damage to the nervous system, think Parkinsons, MS, dementia, damage to the reproductive system, think about all these people that, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to be nice, but I'm going to go to a different subject. Reproductive system, people that are confused about what they should be. people that can't get pregnant. Infertility's growing like crazy, which creates hormonal imbalances. Most men have low testosterone. Most women have way too much estrogen as opposed to their progesterone. More birth defects, more autism, and many, many other illnesses are created and attributed to these toxic chemicals. So I'll try to change the subject a little bit. So one of the things, 7 of the things that you need to consider why you're not healthy, I call them the 7M, or 7 major sins, and it's medications. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Now, I love our medical doctors, and God knows they've saved my bacon several times. They're wonderful people. But medications taken as prescribed kill over 100,000 a year in America. Then you got mercury, that's very, very prevalent in our society for a lot of reasons, and it's in our vaccines, which makes me crazy. The third M is Monsanto. Yes, they are evil as hell. Yes, they are. Then you got the mangled fats, which means trans fats, hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, the soybean oil, the corn oil, canola oil, poison. The mycotoxins, and we're, I don't know if we have it yet, but we're real close to having a really, really good test to see if that's an issue. And then the manufactured xenobiotics, those are the ones that mimic hormones, which is estrogen, and that's why, us men are full of plastics, pesticides, fire retardants, and that's why our testosterone's going down. And then managed care. And that's why I mentioned earlier, the average osteopath or medical doctor, they don't like the system they're in. The system's been taken over by people that don't really see the patient. You need to let these people loose, unhandcuff them, and let them practice medicine. So medical care's, the managed care is not a good thing. Let these guys do their own thing, and so your diagnosis won't be a calamity, because it's a calamity because your doctor's not allowed to do what they know to do. They really do have their hands tied. So the thing about, you hear, you just have expensive urine, and my answer to that is BS, because what I've just said, the lowered nutrients, up to 76% lower than in the 1970s. Well, that wasn't good in the 70s, and then you start spraying glyphosate on it. So some of the things that may have helped Michelle get well, and I think she had a high C-reactive protein, so inflammation. Read about C-reactive protein on Cleveland Clinic's website. So B12, let's talk about B12 a minute. And I've seen one particular famous doctor, cardiologist, put out some stuff, and it's crap. It's crap. Sorry, I'm not intelligent enough to speak better than that, because it's cyanocobalamin, so you can take it till the cows come home. Sorry, southern phrase there. You can take it till the cows come home. Cyanocobalamin's not going to convert if it's not methylcobalamin, and you have to take a lot of it. But the methylcobalamin's the one that's going to do you good. Even the good B12, it helps in even in Parkinson's. And it's like, people say, "Well, that's a bold statement." Yeah, well, it's printed all over the place, so it's there. It's real. It slows the progression in those that already have the disease, because it protects against something, toxic substances from L-DOPA or excess L-DOPA. It can reverse and help with Bell's palsy. It converts homocysteine into methionine, which lowers your chance of heart attack and stroke. Look up homocysteine and read about it. You can get increased synthesis of proteins that help regenerate nerves, and that's from Journal of Neurological Science. So B12 just by in of itself is good. It helps with liver, eye disorders, hallucinations, headaches, and irritability. Yeah.
Well, there's a question I'd like you to answer. While most experts agree that a vitamin or nutritional supplement may help you, I think the problem is that a lot of them are synthetic.
Yep.
And I think that's what you're trying to describe. And you have a really good analogy for synthetic vitamins. So, like Dr. Liz is talking about B12 and different ones. What is a synthetic vitamin, and what should a person be looking for, I guess, when they're trying to pick something good?
Oh, there's a lot of letters that some of the manufacturers put out there, like GMP, and you should have a third-party assay. The different companies that we shop from all have that, all the certification. One of the things is you can look at the vitamin where they poo-poo it. Actually, I was going to do a show on probiotics because they poo-pooed it on Good Morning America. I'll get to that later, but I thought Michelle, she was so sweet to talk to. Hey, I'd rather talk about her. So she's just taking the vitamins, doing what I tell her to do, and that's the key. You can't try. You got to jump in and do it. There's a difference. Notice people that say try. I'll try to come to your party. They never show up. So you got to get a good one. And I don't know what analogy Janet's talking about, but
the right-handed.
Okay.
Yeah. See, I'm sure I'm going to say it wrong because I'm not a guy and I don't do mechanics, but a man would understand that.
Well, I tell people. I said this to a guy yesterday, I guess. Maybe that's where Janet got it. Well, it's like putting a left-handed threaded nut on a right-handed threaded bolt. It's an exact mirror image, but it, by golly, won't fit.
So your body, when it's trying to take these in, doesn't really know how to break that down because
and then it becomes toxic. It's not even giving you stuff. Then your body has to use extra energy, which most people have too much fatigue anyway, don't have the energy to spare.
So then it does become expensive urine because you just spent money on a vitamin that didn't do anything because it went right through.
Well, I'm a little bit of I don't know how to sugarcoat it. The only thing I know about sugarcoating is it's good on donuts. But I told a person one time, I said the most expensive vitamin in the world is the one the cheap one that doesn't work. And most of our stuff actually is less expensive than the junk on the market. But it's perception, folks. Find somebody you trust.
Well, that's the difference, and that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit, too. You talked a little bit about looking for a company that has a reputable manufacturing process. When you go into a health food store, you may or may not find that. I guarantee you won't find the physician grade of it, but you can find a few of them out there that have a better manufacturing process than the others, but you don't know who they are unless you've done a whole bunch of research. And a great certification of a manufacturer, it costs that manufacturer a whole lot of money to have a third party come in and look at the raw materials on each batch. And not only the batch, which someone would say, oh yeah, our batch was tested, but what about when it's sat there for a while? What does it do down the road? There are companies that are so reputable, which are some of the ones we use, that they actually have the material tested at different intervals. And that's what drives the cost up on some of the vitamins, is because they're having to pay a third party to come in, while these other people are selling them super cheap because they're taking these raw materials that are coming in and not checking for a lot of the
sometimes
things.
Polluted and sometimes don't have enough of the active ingredient to make it work.
Right. So you're going, hey, this is a great buy, and the reality of it is you are actually possibly putting in more toxins and you're not able to use it. One of the products I wanted you to talk about the difference, because we have this all the time. People will come in here and go, I want vitamin D, because most people realize from their doctors now that vitamin D is something a doctor will recommend. And you can get vitamin D, and vitamin D can make the blood work change on some people. Some of it's so bad, synthetic-wise, it don't even move it, even when somebody's taken 10,000 units of it.
Well, most of them don't work. I've done the statistics on that.
And then there's some that do. But are they absorbing that? And that's the kind of the deal when we tell somebody, when they're really low in D, we say, well, you need D3 plus K. Well, most people don't know what K even does, and they're going, why? It costs more. I want the cheap one, which... Okay, we always tell you that's kind of like, the whole thing is to get calcium into the arteries or get it circulating better, right?
We circulate, but not deposited in the arteries.
Right, deposit. You want it to be where you don't lose bone structure so bad. You want your calcium in there. So basically, that's like calcium coming into a hotel. Vitamin D is the bellhop or the door greeter that takes you and sticks you in the lobby of the hotel. But calcium does not know where to go. So K is the person that comes up to you and says, hey, let me take your luggage to your room. So he takes calcium to the right place that it needs to go. That's what K does. And without that, you're kind of missing the whole point, especially if you're osteoporotic, if you're middle aged. You're better off taking D3K2 at lower dose at 5,000 milligrams than trying to up your vitamin D to 10,000. And we're seeing a lot of people with labs that are just that they haven't done lab. They're just taking D because they know that's supposed to be good, but it's actually toxic at high levels, correct?
Well, it can be. I've got a guy coming in today. His vitamin D level tested at 200, and it's like, oh, my God, I've never seen it that bad. It gets toxic at around 140, 150. Vitamin D is very important, and then the K2 also should be, and I know it works because I'm a coronary calcium score, and I'm glad some of you are getting that. That's really good. My coronary calcium score, I scored a 6. Anything under a 400 is good. And they said I've got enough calcium plaquing in my heart to be a 2-year-old toddler, so quit worrying about it. D is important in the prevention of breast cancer, colon cancer, osteoarthritis, because it won't let the calcium be deposited in your bones or joints as quickly. It enhances immunity. It theoretically should be synthesized in the skin from sun exposure, but we're so blooming toxic that doesn't happen very well. It requires conversion by the liver. So you people, I say, well, if your liver enzymes aren't in the optimal range, you're not going to do that. And, of course, liver is incredibly important in the conjugation of all these nasty exogenous hormones, the plastics, the pesticides, the phthalates, the fire retardants, etc. And then from the liver, it's got to go through the kidneys before it becomes actually fully active.
There's another one also I want you to talk about is a multivitamin. There's so many of you out there that do these over-the-counter things, or they go to the big box stores, and I think that it's just making you feel better that you're taking something, and I could almost guarantee you would tell me that you don't feel any different taking it. You think that a good multivitamin is super expensive, and I want Dr. Lewis to explain how that's a fallacy, and that we have a product that is actually very high in the things that you need. They're very good ingredients. And the product right now is like $19.99. I mean, it's super incredibly cheap. I can almost tell you can't go to the big box store and get that for that cheap. I know you're not getting the quality in it. But Dr. Lewis, could you explain, basically what the difference is, I guess, between a good quality one and one that just somebody's buying over the counter?
Well, again, the cheap ones are synthetically made, which actually creates and takes more energy to detoxify. It has to be in a good form. Ours has a little bit, of D, not enough. Vitamin A, C, 50 micrograms of D. E, but vitamin E, most vitamin E's on the market is DL alpha tocopherol. Well, the DL is talking about which way the molecule rotates. That's a bad one. Don't do it. Ours is the really super duper, high quality one with the mixed tocopherols. That's very incredibly important. It's got the K. And I don't think you should just do straight multivitamin. And even if you can't feel a difference on mine, it covers a lot of sins from the bad food and the statistics that I read a while ago. It has much more bioavailable forms of calcium, magnesium, the right kind of folate. For those of you that understand MTHFR or 5-MTHFR, it has the right kind. And what else does it do? The right kind of, it has the methylcobalamin, not the cyano, which is the bad one. We have an iron-free formula. You should not take iron unless it's been tested on lab. We see a lot of people that have too much iron. We test ferritin, stored iron. And then we have many people that are anemic, which is not always, but generally it's a B6, B12, or folate deficiency. So the mixed tocopherols that I mentioned, the mineral acid, amino acid chelates. Those are the ones that if you see something that says TRAACS, TRAACS, which stands for the Real Amino Acid Chelate System, those are the more expensive ones, but they're way, way, way more bioavailable. That's the ones you want, and that's what we have. We have the good one, and I've seen people, Janet's talking about the cheap ones. It's like, well, I've seen people that are spending $60 or $80 a month just for a multivitamin. It's like, well, yeah, that particular company is a good one, but why in the world would you spend 3 to 4 times as much for something that I can get as good of and sometimes improve quality? Why spend the extra money? Spend it on something else that you need.
Well, and unfortunately for many women out there, they always go get that one in the big box store that's with iron because they're tired and they don't feel good and their hair's falling out and they're thinking, it's got to be an iron problem because that's what you go to. I need iron.
Because we grew up when they were advertising Geritol, iron, poor blood. It's like, yeah.
That's true. That's very true. And it turns out
Janet didn't. She was too young.
I just remember you talking about it.
Yeah, thanks.
There's been many times that we'll run lab and that person, like Dr. Lewis said, doesn't need iron at all, or they have too much iron because you can overdo iron, and that's something you don't want either.
It oxidizes. That's not a good thing.
It turns a gate hinge into a rusty thing that won't open, right?
Yeah, good analogy. Makes you wrinkle faster, women. So.
Yeah, but if that's what you're doing and you think that that's your missing link and you're feeling that way, we always tell people do the lab work because the lab work will reveal exactly what's going on. It's not a question of let's just go guess and get something out of the store because I think that'll make me feel better and the commercial says so. Go to our website at greenwisdomhealth.com and fill out a health survey. It'll recommend a lab panel. There's no need to guess. The lab is super inexpensive for what you're getting, and we can tell you exactly what supplements that you need instead of you going out and probably spending more money on stuff that don't work. We literally have people go, well, I feel this way. Well, what would you put me on? I said, really? Do you not listen to any of our shows? We don't ever guess. We test. We can give you something, but you may be back in here getting something else, and then you wind up spending more money than you would have if you would have just done the testing. And for the people out there that have been our patients forever and they're still listening to our show, but they haven't done their lab in a long time, you really need to redo that lab after a year, or at least a year and a half, because that stuff changes. So if you're just going off of what you had before and hoping it's still the same, that stuff changes. And optimally, it's about every 6 months to do your lab.
And I'm surprised how many people just listen and don't do. If you're listening and you're just gathering knowledge and you listen to other podcasts, which I think is a good thing, if you're not doing something, why waste your time? Like Eric, he did it and he loved other people enough to send them in to us. So he's blessing people on and on because Eric is a doer. And, I hear a lot of people blame their spouse. It's like, no, it's not your spouse. It's an overactive fork and knife. Did I just say that? Don't let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace, folks.
If the difference in taking a good vitamin, the different products we put you on, the things we use actually can move lab values. Like when Dr. Lewis is talking about B12 folate, well, there are things on the lab, the cell volume, height, and I don't know what else it's on. The RBC. Sometimes you'll see people that have RBC and people go, oh, it's an iron problem. And it's like, well, did you run ferritin to see? Because it really may not be iron. It may be a B12 problem.
Or a B6 problem, I think, is more common. I just analyzed a lab yesterday, and I think the guy's 74, 75 years old. Now, this guy has been super consistent for about 5 years. He does everything I tell him to do. He gets information from other people and asks me questions. And, his lab at 74, whatever he is, looks better than the average 30-year-old. But it's the consistency, and the lab's never perfect. He's got one issue, but which I'm going to send him to his urologist about, but which, they do good work too. But it's consistency, folks. And we're seeing people every day drop like flies that are younger than us, and I don't think we're old yet.
And now with this immune system compromise thing, which that's the problem. It's like it's easy for us to get sick now because we were barely getting by to start with. So it doesn't take much to come along to make you ill. So that's the whole thing of trying to get your health back to a place that your body's strong enough to fight some of this off on its own. You do have an immune system, and sadly, many are compromised, and they don't really know why. And, that woman out there that's thinking, I have an iron problem. It might be your thyroid. It might be your other hormones. You don't know without guessing. So
some people live with their gas tank with the E showing the empty lights on. Other people fill it up, and the more you take to a point, of course, the longer range you have to drive your truck. I'm looking at my pickup, but don't drive on empty, and that's where most people are with their nutritional health.
That's good. And sadly, our show has come to an end. We did not get to many things we wanted to talk about again, and we know we still have questions from before. We appreciate those very much.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah, go on Shooting Straight with Dr. Lewis's Facebook page. You can ask questions there, get answers. We have a lot of people interacting on that. There's a pop-up on the website at greenwisdomhealth.com where you can also ask questions. Get started today. It's time to have a life worth living. Thank you for listening to our show, and Dr. Lewis has a closing statement.
Yeah, and we give a lot of information, and you can get good things from other people. The fact is you need to do something. The bad news is time flies. The good news is that you're the pilot.
So don't crash the plane. Have a good week. We'll be here next time.
Once again, our show has come to an end, but your hope in your health is only beginning. If you or a loved one are in need of a different outcome and are waiting for a brighter future, take the first step and go to our website and fill out the health survey. Please don't keep us a secret. If you know someone that could benefit from this podcast, please share this show with your friends and family. You're only one step away from a life worth living.